highway engineer working on high-profile projects, and as a member of the Transportation Appeals Board with the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. Mr. Bean leads his company, the CLD Consulting Engineers, in both business and in service. He has led the CLD Soup Kitchen team, he has supported the United Way campaign, and donated his time and skill to rebuilding South Congregational Church in Concord, New Hampshire after the church suffered a fire. Mr. Bean is a dedicated family man, having supported and cared for his wife and 4 children, while maintaining a healthy and active lifestyle on top of his already impressive resume. His picture is being passed around in the 1974 yearbook right now. Please join me in welcoming the 2013 New Hampshire Engineer of the Year, Mr. Chris Bean.
If you don't mind, I'm a little warm, so I'm going to get comfortable. Start with here. It is truly a pleasure to be here this evening, and I was saying that I'm not looking at this as a presentation as much as a discussion with all of you, because I feel like this is family for me, being back in Norwich. And if there's anything that I can help you with, I'm certainly here for it. If I look a little disheveled tonight, it's because I am. I happened to take my oldest son, my 12-year-old, for his 12th birthday to the Red Sox game last night. And we stayed till the bottom of the 12th inning, and I live in Concord, New Hampshire, so I got home at about 1 o'clock. And I'm going to hold Norwich responsible for this, but one thing I learned here was discipline, and I am a very disciplined exercise health nut, and I get up at 3:10 every morning, weekday morning. So literally, I had 2 hours sleep last night. I'm hoping that I can get through okay tonight.
Were you rooting for the Red Sox?
I was, but there was an unruly person from Baltimore behind us that had way too much to drink, and it was hard to stay focused at times. But we had a great time. We had a great time. Okay, advancing the slides.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Get it down there.
Okay.
Down there. There you
That's
go.
fine. That's fine. Can everybody see well enough? Okay. And can you hear me okay? I'm going to start right out and say, if you're ever given an opportunity to speak to a group, it's a great question to ask, because there's nothing more frustrating than sitting through a presentation and not being able to hear somebody speak. And you've got to raise your hand, because if you can't hear them, a bunch of other people can't hear the person too, and see if you can get it taken care of. I'm opening this up for you to raise your hands. Please do so and interrupt me. Give me a break from talking. That would be helpful. When you have questions, I want to have this as a learning experience so we can learn from each other. As hopefully you're going to learn something from me, something from our discussion tonight. Okay. Civil engineers, electrical engineers, construction managers. I'm a civil engineer. I don't work with electrical engineers, but we do have construction managers, if you will, resident inspectors and so forth, so I feel much more comfortable there. I contacted an electrical engineer on the New Hampshire Professional Engineers Licensure Board prior to preparing this presentation. And he basically said that, in electrical engineering, you have to understand the code. And just like in civil or, construction management, there's certain core skills you have to learn for your profession. So as long as you leave here with that responsibility of knowing that and keeping up with the code, and that you'll be fine. And I think the remarks that we're going to discuss tonight will apply to everybody in the room. Except maybe the professor. I don't know where they are at this point. Hopefully it'll help everybody. Okay. The down arrow. Let's see.
Here we go.
Whoa. Okay.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. Professor Kelly, Mike was in my class of 14 CEs. the time. I do believe, and I still believe, that Norwich is a great school. I learned the technical skills. I learned what it meant to have teamwork, the importance of teamwork, and discipline. You heard that. A little obsessive on the exercise side, but it's helped me. Again, my goal is to have each one of you take something from tonight. I'm going to zip through some of this here. Professional experience. When I was sitting in your chair, I was really enthralled with water resources. You know, that was kind of my area of interest. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but water resources was, you know, the hydraulics, hydrology, that kind of really had my interest, I thought. And then we had, you know, the recruiters came up. And as it turned out, I interviewed with A.D. Fisking, an ex-military person from the New Hampshire DOT. And the New Hampshire DOT offered me a job right out of the gate with the highest salary at the time of anything else. I can't remember what else I got, if I did at the time. And it was doing highway design. I didn't want to do highway design. Boring. You know, I didn't have a good, I didn't have passion about what I was going to be doing, but I said, you know, I'm going to give it a shot. So I did. And I worked for the New Hampshire DOT, Department of Transportation, for 13 years. Public sector job. Public sector offers some pretty good benefits right out of school. They had, as I grew through there, they had a training program. A lot of times they have money. They can afford to take people and take them and put them through the different divisions. And you get a taste of what the whole organization is doing before you and they help you select where you're going to end up. So it can be beneficial. And there are a lot of specialists at the DOTs. Many of them have been doing the jobs for 40 years when you come in there. And you're coming in, let's say, as a junior engineer, and you're making more money than they are. Okay, right off the top. And I remember one of my first assignments working with John Amaral, and he's a tech. And I'm working on a drainage problem or something, and I needed some as-built, some old information in order to solve my problem. So I asked John where I could find it. And he says, the black book. He says, just look at the black book. They don't teach you anything in school. Well, come on, you gotta be fair. You know, every organization has its own systems. And it takes a while before you figure out, you know, what the black book is. That's the black book, had all the old projects and where you could find all the information. Well, he was a little, kind of pulling my leg, but as it turned out. But I was making more money than he was. He had to tell me about the black book. So anyway, public sector, and then I went to the private sector, where I am today. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Over time, I've been fortunate. I've grown to really enjoy my job, and it really, it's not work. If you really enjoy what you're doing, it's really not work. And that's really, I think, where you want to be, because if you get there, then you're gonna do well, because you're happy. What have I learned? It's so helpful to go in and learn the business from the ground up. I mean, I learned we were plotting detail, survey detail. Nowadays they do everything on the computer, but you know, whatever it is, the base level of what the skills are in your particular profession. In order to manage it and do well, you're so much better, more valuable if you know and you understand what it is from the ground up. It'll help you later on. Big versus small firms. Does anyone have a thought as to what that might be? How might your experience be different in a big firm versus a small firm?
So in a big firm, like not as vital per se, because there's a lot of people just do your job for a week. if like you fail it, but in a small firm, like you're more, like they're more dependent on you, because there's like only 6 guys in the firm, and you don't show up to work one day, they're gonna work so.
And that's kind of the heart of the issue is in a smaller firm, go ahead.
I think it's like being in schools. In a big school, you go and you sit with a bunch of people and you're just another number. But in a smaller firm, it's more person to person. If you really need help, you lean over the guy sitting next to you, the desk next to you, and ask him a question, as opposed to having to go around the cubicle with the next guy, something like that.
We just, actually, we don't have them anymore right now, but we hired a person fairly recently who had worked at a large firm. And he was really good at quantities on a project. He could do quantities, compute quantities on a highway job. He knew everything to do with quantities because you know what? He got pigeonholed into doing quantities. That was his job. And in order to put a project together in some of the big firms with the huge projects, they take you and they'll target you as a specialist in this area, and you get really good at it. And you know what? When you get good at it, that's value for the employer. They get a whole bunch of people that are really good at what they do, put them all together, and you get the project done very efficiently. But if I ask you to do the design and do the modeling and the quantities and the estimate and all these things, it's like, guess what? This is training. There's a lot you have to learn. Well, that's what happens in a small firm. You get exposed to a lot more, and there's a better opportunity in my mind to learn. And that's what we find in many people that come to our company, because the way we're spread out in disciplines, they appreciate it because they get to work on a lot of different jobs, and they see all aspects of the job. Oh yeah. Professional experience, I had prior experience, family, summer jobs, internships. I cannot speak high enough about internships tonight. If you leave with one thing, it's kind of late maybe for you people, but when there is an opportunity to serve as an intern with a firm, I highly recommend that you take it. And it's not about the money. You will learn so much more. We used to hire, one of our interns is our structural engineer for us today. And back when we hired her from Tufts University, we actually had her doing painting and stuff, which was really low. Pretty bad at the time when you think of it. But she was around us, and occasionally she would help us. She got to understand what we do. And we got to understand what kind of a worker she was, and what kind of skills she had. And whenever you can do that, you leave that internship knowing so much more about the company and yourself. It's like, there's no way I would work in that environment. Or you know what, I can see myself working there. It really helps a lot. And even if you can get exposed to a couple companies, I highly recommend it. Did you have something to add on internships or any professors?
What I wanted to say was, we're probably past that time for these guys. But remember, we got freshmen and sophomores coming up, and being able to connect them with an internship, if you knew of any or knew of some in your firm or in other firms or other organizations, that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, we have an HR department. We can talk about it later, how to make that happen. I got lucky. I chose transportation, and do all of you know what you want to specialize in right now? Are you there? Are you certain? I really doubt that most of you are really certain, and I say that my theory is you won't be until you really get out there and give it a shot. It may take some trials, back and forth to actually get there. But I remember reading a book, What Color Is Your Parachute? By Richard Bowles. And what it's about is that if you can direct yourself in an area, in a profession that you're real comfortable in, you're going to do well because you're happy in it, you're confident, you're just made for that type of job. I'm going to get moving here. On-the-job trade, professional development. I learned about the Black Book. Extra studying when needed to excel at work. It happens. You get handed those jobs to do the modeling, and you're not really sure about it. Well, there are opportunities to learn, and you can do that on your own time. There's a technical versus a management track. There are some people that just love the technical side of what they do. They're real comfortable there. And, a football team, you have to have all different types of players to be successful. And sometimes we love people that want to excel just in the technical side. Because it's very important to us and valuable. Somebody who's a task manager or just, a production person. That's fine, that's great. And they can excel and get, a pretty good salary over time. I still think that the management track has a little bit bigger potential overall. And that's the one that I chose. Again, in 1979, in MBA, I wasn't sure what I wanted to specialize in. I was looking at University of Lowell, and there were some courses that I was interested in, but I was too scared to focus it in one area, just for fear that I might not really end up doing that. So I just got my MBA, a 3-year evening program, and it was great. I had to speak, do presentations. I had to read case studies and write papers, a lot of that, as well as the accounting, learning more the business side. It was great training for me. Okay, CLD, just quickly, our company, just so you understand where I'm coming from. There are 3 owners. I'm one of the owners. Right now, there are 3 of us. And if you just open the front cover, just briefly, you see this on the inside. Those are the kind of services we do. We do a multitude of engineering services. And I'm not going to go through them in the interest of time, but the bottom line is, we're multifaceted, and it's like a 3-legged stool. Sometimes the private sector is really booming, and we do really well. We're busy and making our money there, and the public sector might be slow, and the municipal sector might be average or whatever. Well, we're not focused in one area, so if one area is struggling, the other 2 can help pick it up. It's kind of like a balanced portfolio, if you will, in a mutual fund. So it's good for sustainability. We've been in business since 1976, so we've been in business for a long time. How do we get clients? Most of the clients are repeat clients. I'd say 80%. And it's still hard, because there's, for all the work you're doing and the relationships and the jobs you're doing, there are people knocking on the door all the time to take your job away from you. And you got to remember that, and you got to provide exceptional service to the client. That's what it's about in our game. And it's hard sometimes. Sometimes we get wrapped up in our own problems and issues, and you got to make sure you're focusing on the client. But 20% is competitive base. You have to stay in the game. We have to stay out there in a competitive environment, because we all have to compete at some level at times. Like state contracts, we have a lot of E-Trans contracts. They have what's called retainer contracts. You win a contract that's for let's say $3 million for 3 years, 4 years. And then once you win that contract, they'll assign you projects. And then you negotiate a scope and a fee to get the work done, the design work on that. But you have to compete in the first place. So you have to stay sharp on the competitive side. And you rely upon branding, and it's all about our ability to convince clients that we're the best choice. We understand their needs. We can help them the most. They trust us. Any questions?
It sounds silly, but do you have a guy that is, or is it view that their job is to just go and talk to companies and really just convince the person that you do the best choice and like he's just a really good public speaker.
That's a great question. I don't know if everyone heard it, but do we have a specialist who out there, more like a salesperson? What we found is that number one, we can't afford that person. We've had them in the past, but in this day and age, we can't afford somebody just on overhead doing sales. The best sales we can do is to actually have the technical people out there who can talk the talk and walk the walk with the people who have the needs and be able to make sure that the clients understand that we get it. We understand that you're trying to figure out what their problems are. And maybe in a discussion you can come up with some innovative response to a problem or help them solve something just through conversation, discussion. They're going to remember that. And so it keeps you sharp. And that's another way where having an MBA, I mean, when you become a project manager and up in management, it's good to have skills not just on the management level, but also on the technical level. So you can talk the technical side.
Chris?
Yes.
So when you have a client that, this might be more in the public sector, is working with a different company, how do you beat that company to get that new company?
That's a really good question. We're constantly up against it, and it's so hard. We now have projects we've gotten into Massachusetts and Mass DOT. And Boston, I mean, we're 55, 60 people, okay? We're tiny compared to the big giant firms, the Parsons, Brinkerhoff, the Lewis Berger, these firms, Face Wofford, Thorndike, and these firms that are entrenched with those clients, it's so easy for them to put together an effective proposal because they have so much experience to build on. And as long as they've been doing a great job, it's hard to knock them off. We're kind of in that position with V-Trans. We do a lot of work for V-Trans. I not pat myself on the back, but we're one of their top consultants for V-Trans, and it's so hard for other consultants to get in there. But you have to keep trying. And that's what I was going to say. That's one of the first lessons I learned in the private sector. You have to learn how to lose. It's kind of like making mistakes, but sometimes you pour your heart and soul into a proposal. You bust your butt, you do all your homework, you do the interview, you ace the interview, and you leave, and you just feel so good about your team and what you've done, and you get slapped in the face for some reason. The competition just has a leg up on you, and you lose. And I had a hard time with that when I first got into the private sector. It does a job on your confidence, and I took it personally. You can't. It's business. It's business. You have to figure it out. Okay, what do I do? How do you react? You go in, you review the other proposals. You go and you try to get feedback. We were just successful on a Mass DOT proposal submission. They selected a ton of firms, and we finished down near the bottom, but we got our foot in the door. Okay, we have to build more and more rapport with the people we work with to show them what a good job we can do. So learning how to fail, falling off the horse and getting back up on it is important. Hopefully I answered your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so different nowadays. Like the hiring process, when I started out, there wasn't as much HR related focus as there is today. There's a lot of strict criteria we have to go through to stay certified with a lot of these public agencies. And now we do federal work, and the feds are even, they require more and more affirmative action plans and so forth. So it's just a lot more red tape involved. But in the long run, it's a good thing. As long as me speaking now, as long as it doesn't get to the point that it's pushing quotas. And I don't like any thought of having to interview, having people get favoritism based on some self-identity, race, or gender status issue. That's me. Resumes. I love looking at resumes. The first thing I look at is what have you done in the past? And I think about, even if it's, I'm interested in if it was a grocery store clerk or whether you worked for the local water department, maybe installing pipe, or if you're an Eagle Scout, something that demonstrates something where you reference as a key. If you can get some people that understand what a good worker you are, getting a personal reference with a resume, it just makes it puts people over the top sometimes when you're comparing a lot of resumes. Especially if it's in the field that you're looking to hire somebody in. Standard application form. We have a standard one. I never realized we force people to do it, but we do. I just know that one of the areas you have to fill in is what your salary requirements are. And salary is such a big thing for new engineers and whatever, but to us, it can really turn us off sometimes and turn people, make it so that they're not even eligible if they put the salary requirement too high. And you have to be careful. You have to be careful with that one. Because sometimes, in order for us to evaluate the value of somebody, you have to really get to know them and work on their skill level and so forth. And immediately, if we see a high salary, and we look at it and kind of pass judgment on it without necessarily giving the candidate a fair shake.
Would you write negotiable or something like that?
Oh yeah, what do you do? Yeah, that's a great idea. Great negotiable. There's a lot of surveys out there too that give you an idea. Well, I'm privy to it. I'm not sure if you people are. There's Live White has a survey out there. Entry-level engineers. I mean, there's information out there. But just be careful. I like the idea of putting negotiable. I think that's fair. And have a survey in your back pocket so you don't get taken advantage of. Okay. Interview evaluation form. Okay, for us, the entry-level engineer, what are we thinking about? We're thinking about somebody who can come in and help us. Why are we hiring? Because we can't get the work done with the people we have. We need help. So what you have to do is try to show that you can help them, you can be valuable to that employer. So, how are we measuring that? We look at any previous experience directly doing, what we do, what we're looking for. AutoCAD or Civil 3D. In our case, we use MicroStation, which is something that a lot of the states require now, and most colleges don't teach it, so we have to train people with MicroStation normally. But if you have MicroStation experience, you learned when you did some internship, that's a plus. Because it means that there's less training involved. You can hit the ground running and immediately start to help. Knowledge of DOT requirements, standards, experience, geometric layout. That's, again, these are all things that can be taught. If you graduated from Norwich, a good program like this, you have good aptitude, we can teach everybody here our job, what we do. It's not, that usually isn't a concern. As long as you do fairly well and you show that you're intelligent. But if you can demonstrate some of these areas coming into the interview, you have an advantage. Communication skills for project needs. Ability to work within a team fit. Those are huge. Those are huge. I've hired, I've made a few mistakes. And that's why I like, and I think it's very important, how to make the process successful, lessons learned. Don't limit your area of interest unless you're sure where you're going to go. Keep it more general. And the other thing is don't oversell something. Your skills or abilities in one area, because if you do, it's going to come back and bite you. That's not good. You don't want to start with a certain expectation and then not be able to perform. It's not going to help your progression through the firm. Interview is critical. Try always to meet with the people you work with. No surprises. Quick story. I went to high school with the former governor of New Hampshire, Governor Lynch. And he's a friend of mine, and even though we have different, he's Democrat, Republican, and he was really going for what's best for the state, and that's what I wanted. So he had me on board on the interview panel to select a new commissioner for the DOT. And we didn't have a lot of money, but we interviewed candidates from around the country. Most of them were in this area, but this one in particular was from a state. And we did a phone interview, and the person did very, very well on the phone. And it happened that that person made it to the short list. And we ended up spending our limited resources, and we flew that candidate up to meet with us. And we were just completely surprised from what we saw. What the candidate was in person as compared to what we expected. You all envision, you talk to somebody on the phone, you have a picture of what that person looks like. You just, and this person came in, and I'm not going to go into the reasons why, but he definitely would not have been a good fit for the position that we were asking him to fill. Not even close. So 101 is important. Now, this is a little crazy. 7% of the message pertaining to feelings and attitudes is the words that are spoken. 7%. Feelings and attitudes. Okay, so if the message is the tower is 138 feet, no matter how I say that, you heard the 138 feet. Okay, that's fine. But if you deliver something with some feelings, some sort of a persuasive argument about a job or about a certain effect that a job's going to have on noise or something like that, it has a huge effect on how that is delivered. 38% of the message pertaining to feelings and attitudes is paralinguistic, the way the words are said. 55% of the message pertaining to feelings and attitudes is facial expression. I've done a lot of public presentations, and I was never good in English and reading and verbal. I got through, got my MBA and so forth, but I am very surprised when I read transcripts of my presentations, and I'm disappointed most of the time because I don't speak in perfect sentences. But many times I'll finish off a meeting and people come up and say, "Oh, nice job, I really understood this," or you did a good job answering the questions. And that's hopefully the way I want to work. And a lot of it is the way I rely upon a lot of the way that I present myself, the way I speak. Just we all have our own ways of doing it. But I think one of my skills is people give me a break because they know that I'm trying my hardest. I'm genuine in what I'm presenting. And they're gonna listen to any miscues or missteps and try to figure out what I'm trying to say. That's good. So anyway, meeting in person is very, very important. And employer and candidate both need to evaluate the fit. Don't go in there thinking that you're just trying to get the job. Because it's kind of like a marriage, when you take a job, you're with that company, you're with the people you work with a lot of the time. 5 days a week, 8 hours, or longer a day. You got to spend a lot of time with these people. And if you can meet with the people that you're actually going to be working with, and I like to make sure the people that are going to have, they're hiring, are involved in the hiring process. The worst thing I would do nowadays is hire somebody and say, "Here, meet Joe, he's going to come help you out." That's a recipe for failure. You got to have them make that decision. So they're empowered and they want to make it work. If they say he's the best or she's the best candidate, then they got some skin in the game, if you will. They want to make it work, and you going into the firm, you want to make sure that you check the employer out and figure out, are these guys people that you want to work with, as a firm, ethical, to meet your standards and all that kind of stuff. Need to be honest. If it's not a great fit, don't force it. Focus on where your ability fits in with their team and full value add. Yeah, I always, you got to be careful. On my end, and I like to be involved on most of the interviews, even now, especially the mid-level interviews. But if you play your hand early as an employer and say that we really need help doing this and that and so forth, well, if you really want the job, you're going to start focusing your expertise in that area and your interest in that area. And sometimes I like to find out more about what the person's about, where their strength and interest lies. Not that it'll put them out of getting the job, but it just better defines for me, who they are and what they would bring, as opposed to being a good talker. And I've had plenty of those people that come in, they do great interviews, but they don't necessarily perform the way you expect them to. I had one that I couldn't even read his handwriting, and he was a very poor communicator. And he was put into a project management level, and it just got to the point that it just wasn't working. He was too senior, and he needed to have those skills. We had to let it go. Okay, biggest challenge is running a business. We have to meet payroll every 2 weeks. We have to keep on the cutting edge of technology. I like to think that the consulting world is all glitz compared to the public sector, but we're essentially selling manpower. We don't own many assets. We rent our building. We're selling your brains. And in order to stay qualified to do work for these clients, most of them require that we have the latest software, and so we're compatible with what they're using. So we have to do that. And I'll never forget when I love giving our employees tools, the latest tools. And a while back, we were debating whether the engineers and technicians should have 2 screens. And I wouldn't say me, but other people are saying, we can't afford it. It's not necessary. And we went through the whole thing, and come to find out, you give people tools, and if they can use it, and it makes their job so much easier. It's efficiency. You gain value. It's an easy payback. And now I see it. And I see they have their spreadsheet over here, they have their plan here. They can work off both screens. We have some people that actually work at times on 2 computers at the same time. That's a pretty big reason. But having the latest tools is important. So you don't want to cut back there. Oh yeah, this is another one. It's hard, but our clients are demanding, and we have scope of work and a fee based on what we've said we're going to do. And many times we get pressure all the time to keep asking you to do more and more work. And we're there to please, 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 because it's competitive and we want them to like us, like us, like us. But sometimes you have to just say no, no, no. And you have to figure out how you do that in a diplomatic way so that they understand that, hey, this has to work for both of us here. Otherwise, we can't continue to provide the service. So, that's a struggle at times. We've had projects that have overrun just because we've, not identified extra work items, and we end up going over budget, and we didn't get permission and extra to do the work. Many of you maybe know about that, but that's a red flag. Yeah, budget overruns burden. They put a burden on the firm. this is another thing that I learned, and I learned the hard way. It was actually in, well, I'm not going to get into this specifics, but there was a client that wanted us to do some specialized environmental services, permitting services. And we had some people that had done it before. But this was kind of a complex job, and we can do everything, right? Multifaceted, small firm, we can do it all. Well, we took it on, and just out of the goodness of the client, we realized, and without having them have to tell us, that we were in over our heads. And we ended up hiring a specialist firm to come in and work with us. And you know, as a team, we were awesome. And we've continued to have those relationships. And you got to know when it's best to have somebody, a specialist, come and help. It makes a huge difference. We haven't had any in a while, but sometimes you'll have like a group training session or something. It's, you know, we used to have one of our former owners would act as a facilitator, you know, for the session, you know, trying to, you know, talk personality stuff. And I mean, once you start doing that and you try to put on a different hat, you're kind of biased. They don't look at you the same way. If you can bring in a facilitator that doesn't know anybody, or you know, doesn't, you know, you can just bring the people together, it works so much more effectively. And there are specialists out there that are awesome. And in the long run, it's going to save money. That's something that I've learned. And get attorneys involved if you have to. Don't try to take on too much. You need to keep your staff motivated. That can be hard at times, but it's part of having a great team. And sometimes you have to make hard decisions. What's that mean? Laying people off, cutting people's salaries. But as long as it's explained and other people understand the reason for it, communication is key. Then it can work. I used to think that our newsletter was the best way to communicate. To this day, we really don't have one. And I run company meetings, usually every month, but I get up there and I speak, and as people come in and we talk. We talk about what's going on, they can ask questions, and I mean, that's their forum to share. It's our forum to share information company-wide with employees. You know, when we're going through tough times, we'll talk about it. And so they understand, you know, what's going on and what the plan is. So it's not, you know, how are we going to get out of this? We got to work together. Human resource issues. The topic was managing a modern firm. And many of the generation nowadays, this is from my HR director. She's very, very good at what she does. She says many of them come in with the attitude like, you know, they'd like to, you know, have a lot of flexibility in their hours and do, you know, work at home. Can I work at home a couple days a week? You know, that kind of stuff. But you know, bring the value and so forth. Well, not only am I old school, the work that we do, and that may not be true in all the EE or it's probably construction management, but it depends on what specific area you're in. But with a firm, a design firm, it's so much better to have the team together so you can collaborate. So somebody can look over your shoulder, answer questions right there as opposed to working at home. Sometimes you get experienced people who have a task and they can go and get it done at home. But most of the things we do, it's a complicated project we're working on, and you've got to have everybody together so that we can keep everybody on track and keep moving the ball forward as opposed to finding out that we have to go backwards to bring it forward. And that's why I said I think Norwich is great training for that, because you guys, that's supposed to be male and female. I did check it. It's not just a male, but I think that Norwich trains people to, you know, the discipline. You know what hard work's about, and sometimes it's going to take that and to get to the finish line. Tips. Don't be cocky. There's so much to learn. I've been accused of being cocky at times early on in my career. Maybe I am now, I don't know, but you know, to show respect and so forth. We refer to the people that we really think are our future leaders and our best and brightest as sponges. We like it when the new people come in and they listen and they want to learn and they produce. They're sponges. You know, they soak it all in, and that's a plus. Don't be discouraged to test boring. Again, you do a great job, and you get more and more responsibility. But you need to earn your stripes first. Right? You guys are like that. Stripes. Get it? There's so many different skills that are needed to make a company successful. And no matter what you're doing, if you're doing a great job at it, your job is important. Everyone's got to do their job to make it all happen. At all levels. I have a job, other people have a job, they all have to perform. Learn how to deal with failure. Round up, we talked about that. Learn how to communicate effectively, verbal and email. First impressions are critical. I can't emphasize that enough. You know, a lot of times people do, and I'm, with smartphones nowadays, I use the microphone function, and not only you have to be careful, and you know, like, instead of having a 6, I would say sex or something, on your email message, but not just that, but many times it's not punctuated correctly, and the grammar doesn't come across just the way you want it. You got to be careful when you use something like that. I don't use that professionally. I rely upon email, and personally, I love email on a project because I can communicate information to a group of people and it's the same information. Many times I'll start with a phone call, and then I document that phone call with an email, and I include other people so that everybody's aware of what's going on. But you know what? If you have spelling errors or use English improperly, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and it really reflects badly on me. It would be hard to get over that if you're just starting in the field. You know, just be very, very careful and cautious of that. I don't mean to scare you, but it's important. And also, when you're speaking too, dress professionally but appropriate. Yeah. What are you going to wear? You know, some states they like, you know, everyone wears ties, and some they don't. It's like very informal. And you know, you want to try to fit in. You don't want to come in with a 3-piece suit on, and everybody else is you know, dressed down. But if you're doing an interview, you want to look clean and professional. That's the exception. But then you would choose to fit in. That's my recommendation. Asked if you can get a training program that will allow you to observe more facets of the overall operation. We talked about that. Small firm, big firm, friendly to your colleagues and clients, so they like working with you. Stay away from employees that have bad attitudes. It can bring you down. It really can. I always like to stay away. It's just not a good place to be if you're associated with somebody that's always negative, because you know, after a while it kind of just gets you in a bad place. Any questions? I have more to cover here. feedback is huge. Performance evaluations, try to get input from your employers on how you're doing. You know, if you go 6 months and then you find out that you don't like the way your hair is parted, it's like, why didn't you tell me? You know, whatever. You know, it's so important. If you can get it informal, you don't want surprises at an evaluation. Social media, I don't do that, but some people go a little crazy on that. It's not good. I want to go through all these, the ethical considerations. That's NHSPE, Code of Ethics. I'm really not going to go through these. But ASCE has a Code of Ethics. There's 7 quick things. Safety, health, and welfare of the public. Great molasses disaster. Reason for codes. Work only in areas of competence. Yeah, stick to what you know you can do well and ask questions if you're asked to study outside and work outside that area. Public statements must be objective and truthful, be professional, avoid conflict of interest, build reputation of merit, and don't compete unfairly with others. Act with honor, integrity, and dignity, with zero tolerance for bribery, fraud, and corruption. Continue professional development. You know, many of you, if you get out there, if you have a chance to get out with an employer, they have plans like we do. They pay for your education. They pay a portion of your education. After a certain amount of time, you figure out what you want to get it in, and then you can apply and get a portion of it paid for. How good is that? And work at the same time. And we have a thing called Red Vector. There's a lot of free training that's offered. Get more training, professional organizations, and that's all I had. Questions? Come on. I talked much longer than I expected to. Yes?
I got one about trust. Can you talk about it, maybe keep it without divulging names and everything, but can you talk about where someone lost the trust of their client and how that worked out?
I'm going to turn that to respect. Trust, respect. As soon as you lose that, your client is going to lose confidence in your ability and be hesitant to work with you, and they won't be as understanding when you come to them and say you need more money to do this or that. And in the meantime, they have this other firm that's come in and they've really swayed them, and you can lose a client. And not only do you lose a client, then once you lose the trust of somebody, it's like the bad apple syndrome. And you don't want people out there talking badly about you, your firm. That can hurt you tremendously. If you lose confidence, it's losing confidence in somebody. If somebody continues to make mistakes, doing the same thing, repeat mistakes in the same area, then we lose the trust of those people. Sometimes, depending upon what they're doing, what their task is, we have no option. We had to lay a junior engineer off is because he wasn't able to do the job that we needed to have him do, which was entry-level type stuff. But we couldn't trust him. We didn't trust him. We had to let him go. That's the only skill that we were asking him to do. We couldn't trust him. Yeah, and that's just to produce a product. It wasn't anything else. Follow up, anything else?
What do you expect out of entry-level engineers straight out of college?
What do I expect out of entry-level engineers? I expect sponges. I expect people that are willing to learn, they get along with the people they're working with, they show interest in what the task at hand is, and they're willing to we call them, put your butt in a chair and work. Do whatever it is. You know, sometimes it's going out in the field when there's bad weather, but you don't complain, you do your job, you do it well. And that's the way to get a really good start. One more thing, it's kind of a personal thing, but in November 2010, I was out mowing weeds in my yard and with a backpack blower, and I lost my balance, and I fell into a rhododendron bush. And when I went down, I went to break my fall, and part of the bush came up, and it went through my glasses, and it took the glass, my lens of my glass, and it shoved it right into my head, and it crushed my eyeball. And I thought for sure that my eye was crushed and I was blind. And I was so alone, I ended up just holding my hand over my eye, and I ended up driving myself to the hospital. Come to find out, my eye was crushed, and the lens eventually let go. The lens is it's like a hammock, and has little hairs holding it. The lens let go. I have no lens in my left eye, but after many surgeries, I have an implant on, and now I have a lens, an interior lens. It's on the front part of my iris, and it allows me to see at distance. And what's nice is that I still have, it looks like a normal, and it is a normal eye, and it tracks appropriately and so forth. But my point is, I still have numbness up here in my head, little things, but it's things you kind of get used to. But having your health and maintaining your health is very important to being productive in life. So if you can, it's part of that balance outside of work, whatever you're doing, and staying healthy, getting proper, sleep, exercise, and eating healthy, taking care of your body is important. Anything else? Okay, you guys have my card. You have a copy of the presentation inside the brochure, and I'd be more than happy to, if you want to shoot me an email or call me sometime, answer a question, a follow-up question if you have any. And good luck, guys.
On behalf of the whole sections of professional engineering and David Crawford, the School of Engineering, we thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for after the long night you had last night, and the long night calling out tonight. I would like to present you.
Is this a replacement of my class ring?
No,